we're recording.
Well, welcome back to our policy session on December 1st. It's 1:30, and Gary, what's on the agenda?
Commissioners, you have a very full agenda today and a lot of important topics for you to discuss. And I'm stretching because I don't see staff in the room yet for this presentation. I see one of them actually. So our first presentation, your first presentation is Housing Authority Development Updates. You are sitting as the board of the Housing Authority of Clackamas County for this item. We have Jill Smith and Stephen McMurtry from the Clackamas County Housing Authority to present. And Jill, I don't want to steal your thunder, but is this Stephen's last day at Clackamas County? And if so, let's recognize him at the start, please.
Yes, unfortunately, it is Stephen's last day. Thank you for mentioning that. I was going to bring it up as well. Stephen has been a true leader and inspiration for us at the Housing Authority, and I think at the county. He's put us on a road to success and got us in a really good place for him to depart, unfortunately. But he is reaching for his dreams. Stephen, will you say a couple things about what you're doing?
Sure. Thank you all for having me here today. It's it just so happens that I end at a board meeting kind of almost where I began 26 months ago. So I appreciate all of your support of us, myself in particular. I was so very nervous to come in front of you all 26 months ago, and I gotta say, kind of nervous right now. But it's been a great ride. I have made the decision after lots of talk with my family and friends, and I've just had a deep desire to get back to doing some consulting work with nonprofits, a little more boots on the ground in other parts of the state in Oregon, and doing some direct development work. So I'm taking the shot, and I have started my own company and working on some capacity building things, many things that we're doing here at the county, but spreading it around throughout the Pacific Northwest.
Well, thank you for your work. We appreciate that, and we're sorry to see you leave. I hope you get a haircut, though.
COVID hair is a real thing.
Best of luck in your new endeavor.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephen, for everything. Yeah.
So no worries, we'll be ensuring that Stephen continues to help us along our path as we develop affordable housing. If I have anything to say with it, he's done such a wonderful job so far. And I want to turn this over to Stephen and Devin Ellen. Would somebody please pull her in? She's our senior developer. They're going to be doing a development report for the board. No action is necessary. We're just here to give you an update and answer your questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And it looks like Devin has joined us. Again, thank you all. I'll kind of turn things over to Devin, and it's a face that I hope you all get more familiar with as time is going on. So without further ado, I'll let Devin lead, and then we can answer any questions that you may have.
Good afternoon, Chair Bernard, Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to update you on all the things the HAC development team has been working on. I'll be referencing the progress report included in your board packet, and we'll be happy to answer any questions after the update. So first off, our Webster Road project is tracking toward a construction closing in early second quarter 2021. And next month, our contractor, Walsh Construction, plans to go out to bid. We've been hearing positive reports regarding bid coverage, and we're optimistic about reaching our MWESB participation goal of 20%. We recently released an RFP for property management and services, and our review committee will be reviewing the proposals next week. We're now working on securing our lender and investment partners and finalizing our 4% tax credit application with Oregon Housing and Community Services. HAC plans to include a resolution on the consent agenda for the December business meeting that authorizes HAC to enter into agreements with our financing partners for debt and equity financing. And we'll have the opportunity to discuss this after the update. Next up, Hillside Park. HAC completed 2 significant milestones on this project. We completed the environmental review process and published our findings of no significant impact. Our request for release of funds was approved by HUD, and that's an important step in the Section 18 disposition process. Second, our design team completed the 100% progress package, and that, along with our preliminary plan development application, was submitted to the City of Milwaukee for review. This application describes the proposed plan for the development and is a major step towards rezoning the property. In the coming months, we plan to focus on the Section 18 demolition and disposition application with the goal of submitting a full application to HUD in mid-2021. Next up, we have Hillside Manor, our occupied rehab project. Construction is progressing smoothly, and we are currently on schedule with 53% of the project complete. Residents on the 5th, 6th, and 7th floor have already returned, and we anticipating having all remaining residents back in their units by early February, with construction completion slated for October 2021. Okay, moving on to our Metro bond projects. So in addition to Webster Road, the Fuller Road Station project is also tracking toward an early 2021 construction close. So just to remind you, Fuller Road Station is located in unincorporated Clackamas County, adjacent to the Fuller Street Max Station. This is a new construction project that will provide 100 units of affordable housing with a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, serving families and individuals with incomes between 30 and 80% of the area median income. In addition, it will serve 25 households who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, and these units will be supported by project-based Section 8 vouchers provided by HAC. HAC plans to include a second resolution on the December 17th consent agenda authorizing HAC to enter into Metro bond loan agreements and the Section 8 voucher contract with the project partnership. So Webster Road and Fuller Road Station comprise over 18% of our total bond unit production goal and 22% of the total production goal for 30% AMI units. The other 2 bond projects, Maple Apartments and Good Shepherd Village, are working on design development and programming and securing planning approvals. So that concludes our development progress update, and I'd like to open it up to any questions.
So the one on Fuller Road, is that Anna Geller's project?
Correct.
Okay, because last time I heard there were some issues and evidently we've gone past those, correct?
That's my understanding.
Good to hear. Thank you. Any other questions? Sonia?
Yeah, thanks. I'm working from my iPad. My computer's having some glitches. I'm trying to figure it out. So sorry about that. Question about Fuller Road. When we had met the last time, there were so many units that were going to be at 80% of AMI. I may have missed it because you talked kind of fast, but I was just curious about that.
Yeah, I believe there are still 5 units that are slated to be 80% AMI.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Paul?
Yeah, so I was trying to look at the last page of the packet there, and I had a little time getting back to unmute myself. So the as far as our goal for the measure, we've got, is that the 812 number, or is that our own desire?
That's the 812 is the metro goal.
Okay.
For Clackamas County.
Okay, so how far along is this the Good Shepherd project? And that looks like it's in the Happy Valley area, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, they're still in pre-development, working towards planning approvals and programming. So I think last time I have an update with them later this week. They were slated to start construction toward the end of 2021. Okay,
so we're a little more than halfway through, or at least half as far as the production goals. We've identified 461, so that's more than half of the 812. Is there any hopes of or ideas on where the remainder might land, or opportunities?
Well, we have significant opportunities in the Hillside Park redevelopment project. So we'll be building 400 new units there. Not all of them will be bond eligible, but we anticipate a significant number of them fulfilling that goal. In addition, we plan to release another NOFA in the 1 or 2 years, soliciting proposals for additional bond eligible projects.
Okay, my last question, and that is, how are projects penciling right now? I know that sometimes it's difficult to make them economically viable, and I'm hearing that some folks are stepping back in development world because things aren't penciling. So I don't know what aspect that is, but how's that looking for how's the penciling looking for our projects, our type of projects with the bonding? Are we just going to be able to bond above that and make the economics work, or are we? And I guess what I'm really getting to is how affordable these units really get to be. I guess is a big equation there. We know how complex it is, but maybe someone can answer that for me.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that, Commissioner. I would say this much. What we're hearing in the news is something we've talked about many times at these updates and previous to this, is that on the commercial front side of things, more above the 60th percentile, those are at the 80th percentile and higher. Commercial rates, interest rates are starting to creep back up again. We're not seeing a lot of lending, at least I'm not seeing a lot of lending in the debt markets for products that are not what we would be talking about with Metro bond projects, which are affordable, or those that are deed restricted. As far as how they're penciling right now, I think pricing, at least from what we've seen, what I've seen, is coming in line with where we thought pricing would be. As Devin mentioned, on Webster Road, we'll have the next shot at understanding where construction pricing is here in the next few weeks as they get some more refined pricing from their subcontractors. I think that one of the challenges that we face is, again, it's when we look at things like lumber and some of these other products, we have the storm and hurricane seasons that have taken us. We've had the wildfires. And every time we have a situation like that, lumber products usually get shipped from the Pacific Northwest down to those high impact regions first. And so we can see big swings in lumber pricing in particular. I think right now things are looking okay. As far as being able to bond up, for the bond projects that we have preliminarily approved and that you all agreed on and that Metro has agreed on for the 3 projects that we have in Clackamas County plus Webster Road, those properties, if for some reason their construction pricing came back above and beyond where their estimates were, and they had to request more bond financing or a way to fill their gap in their funding, we would have to start the whole process again to revisit these projects, to go through the approvals with all of you, with the sponsors, and with Metro. Right now, the way it works is that these projects need to stay pretty static. And if we did have to ask for additional bonds, we'd have to go back and get authorization for that. So I think there's a lot of incentive from the sponsors and their teams to really, really work on cost.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Stephen. I know it's tricky sometimes, if there is market contraction, then maybe in some areas, maybe bid costs will maybe fall if there is a slowing of demand for that. And of course, prices, I mean, it's not necessarily because there's market contractions that a good thing. And it really depends probably on demand still in the market. I only raise these questions just so that in the future, Jill and others and Devin, is that, I know Los Angeles County, when they passed their bond, they found out that what they estimated per cost per unit and construction costs were basically the cost doubled basically. And they realized that the amount of units they were going to build with the bond, they could only build just a little bit more than half of those. Because of the pricing outpaced it. So I'm just kind of concerned that over the life of this expected construction and building bonding of these projects, that we can keep those costs within reach and achieve the goals of the bond or the measure.
No, I hear that, and I appreciate you reminding us about that, Commissioner Savas. I just wanted to remind the board of 2 points. In our local implementation plan, we agreed to set aside 51% of the funding to support the redevelopment of public housing. And that is what will allow us to make the planning at Hillside Park a reality. Some of those units will be affordable with made possible by bond funding. And then the other thing I wanted to remind you about is Metro has property acquisition funding that has not yet been utilized. And I know that that will allow us to hopefully create another nice sized project in Clackamas County. And we're hoping it's on the west side. There's discussions in Lake Oswego happening related to that right now. So there's some exciting things happening and more to come. And I just want to thank Stephen from the bottom of my heart for all the great work. That we are here today because of his leadership and his support of me and the Housing Authority of Clackamas County and his love for our county. And I hate to see him go.
Well, I appreciate that, Jill, and Stephen, you'll be missed. I really appreciate your knowledge and your depth of understanding of this, and you've been a great resource for us. So you'll be missed, but I know that you'll be within reach, perhaps one way or another. I had a question, and I'll just until I remember what it was, I will just pause.
Well, we're probably going to let him go because I think we don't have to make a decision here today. It's just an update. So,
Okay.
Thought of it?
Yeah, yep, I remember what it was. So on the projects at Hillside, there in Milwaukee, and the 400 units or the collective total number of units are not on the redevelopment piece, but on basically the new construction for the extra units. Are full SDCs to be paid for are all the SDCs in that area to be collected and paid? Like, for example, park SDCs and transportation SDCs we're obligated to pay all those, correct?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
You're just jumping in there. Yes, we are. And the way that I think that the way that I'll advise, or as the Housing Authority works through this approach, that is that those SDC costs, we'll really look at it as when the replat comes in, and Devin, feel free to jump in here if I'm going astray, but when that replat comes in and we have those individual lots established, as we RFP for those, perhaps to use bond financing, then it will be the developer's responsibility to be picking up those system development charges. But right now, there's not necessarily a mechanism to come in and have any kind of reduction. Those full parks, schools, etc., all of those system development charges will be paid at the point of the permits being established for each individual property that's developed.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. Thank you, Stephen. It's hope to see you sometime in the future. And thank you, Jill and Devin. Appreciate your update. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Well, thank you, Stephen.
Take care.
Congratulations. All right, with your permission, Chair, I suggest we move forward because we have a short amount of time today and a lot of sessions. So we're 10 minutes ahead of schedule. So would you like to wait or move forward?
Let's move forward. I'll take your advice.
Okay, so the next session is amendment to the ambulance services contract. We have Health, Housing, and Human Services staff to present, Richard Swift and Philip Mason Joyner. There are also others from the EMS Council that may wish to speak at your discretion, Chair, but we have limited time, although we now added 10 more minutes to this session. So I'm going to ask staff to be as brief as possible so there's time for the board to ask questions. So Rich and Philip, please turn on your cameras and go ahead.
Okay, so I think Philip, will Bill be joining us?
He's available if we need to bring him in.
Okay, all right, we'll pull him in. All right, so Richard Swift with H3S talking to you here today about the ambulance services contract. Good afternoon, Chair Bernard and the commission. So back in, I think it was September, I got an email summarizing the focus of the board's work for the remainder of the calendar year. And one of those things was an evergreen contract for ambulance services. So we jumped right in. We had first meetings with at least 5 fire chiefs, if not pretty much all the chiefs across the county, including AMR, to talk about our process, talk about what we were trying to do, which was a performance-based contract, meaning that in addition to an evergreen contract, what we were really looking for was not just meeting response times, but meeting performance measures as established by the work with the EMS Council. AMR has been an outstanding partner in our EMS Council. They've been actually part of the EMS Council for at least going on 10 years, if not longer. And so we've received feedback from the EMS Council members. I believe 2 of them, Matt Dale and Josh Santos, will be potentially joining us to answer questions. We've had a lot of conversation with Chief Fred Charlton from Clackamas Fire District number 1. And also I think Steve Bowie, who is the EMS Division Chief for TBF&R, may also be joining us. Those 4 individuals who've requested at least the opportunity to speak real briefly and then also answer questions. In this process, I think in the final outcome, what we had was the EMS Council had considered a request to delay this so we could spend more time working on this, and they decided to table that request. And we've had at least 2 of the fire chiefs that have come forward and been in support of this process to engage in the development of the performance-based contract. So with that, I'll turn it over to Philip. He has a presentation and he'll go through that, and then we can answer questions. And then I guess the next step will be essentially, from the board, hearing your desires regarding our next steps regarding the development of this performance-based contract. Thanks.
Thanks, Rich. Christina, are you able to share the slides?
Give me just 1 second. I did not have them prepared.
Thank you. Okay, yes, Philip Mason Joyner, Public Health Director with Clackamas County. This is a version of a presentation that we presented to the EMS Council for the county several weeks ago, along with several of the fire chiefs across the county. So I will go through this very quickly. Today, if you go to the next slide, Christina. Today, we as staff are here to present the Board of County Commissioners with a proposal to amend the existing ambulance service contract with American Medical Response Northwest, or AMR, to a performance-based contract. As staff, we see this as an opportunity to really improve the contractual structure for the provision of ambulance service delivery in the Clackamas ambulance service area. So we have 3 ambulance service areas in Clackamas County: the Clackamas ASA, the Molalla ASA, and the Canby ASA. And today is really focused completely on the Clackamas ASA, which AMR has the contract for. And this will enable us to continue to advance, to enhance, and to innovate within the pre-hospital setting here in the county for our residents. Next slide, please. So why do this now? We are really proud of the work that we've done over the past few years. The collaboration with the Clackamas County's EMS system is at an all-time high. Our council is very active. They have a lot of committees doing a lot of great work to move priorities and innovation forward that we're really committed to assuring continues long-term. The current contract between Clackamas County and the ambulance service contract will expire in May of 2024. Should the board not take this action, as staff, we would be looking at needing to begin preparing for an RFP process probably January of 22, if not earlier. Right now, AMR is meeting their current contract requirements and performance standards. We recognize that repeated renewals and extension processes are disruptive. The 2014 RFP process, the last time that we went out for bid as a county for the Clackamas ASA, we've discussed a lot with stakeholders and recognize that we ended that process with few innovations, more expensive financing model for patients, and less funds available in the EMS cost savings account. So that's funding that is used to support collaborative projects. It's the funding that's provided to the fire agencies. And there are some dedicated funds that are for compassion care. So we're able to provide some funding to help support patients with financial hardships to help pay their ambulance bills. And we really believe that the performance-based contract with accountability structures in place that I'll describe at a high level a little bit later, it will allow us to continue to innovate and move forward. The board approved the county's first ever EMS strategic plan for the council and for the community back in fall of 2018. We've already made some really great strides as a system, and all the partner agencies have worked really hard. Even with the COVID pandemic happening, there's still efforts to move forward with that plan. And next slide. Here are just some of the current efforts that are happening within Clackamas County. I won't go through all of these, but certainly their strategic plan really drives everything. We also have, elements of the council strategic plan reflected in our public health performance Clackamas plans. We make sure that the work that we do as staff, that we're supporting the agencies that are out in communities, providing these critical services. That we've done a lot of work investing in technology to improve medical direction, to include our efforts towards equity and workforce development and diversity, and the agency's efforts to be really responsive to serving our community. Next slide. So what would a performance-based contract mean? I think, for this amendment, one of the key components is that on May 2024, that date would be eliminated from the existing contract. It would not have that expiration date. It would require that there be a programmatic and a fiscal audit to be conducted by county staff, looking at compliance against all the different requirements within the contract, and response time requirements, which they still are accountable to, would continue. That this audit would happen every 24 months. It's not something that is that happens currently. However, there is an external financial audit that AMR is required through the existing contract to have performed, and that's something that would continue. And the audit tool is not created yet. It's under development, but essentially that based on the results of this audit, the score that they receive, it would then dictate the renewal process is what we are proposing. So this table here sort of describes the model of what would be reflected in the amendment should you choose to approve us moving forward with this approach. Next slide, Christina. And then the final slide, the timeline, this is moving very, very quickly. We've heard from a variety of stakeholders. We've received letters expressing concerns about the timeline. We've also had a special EMS council last week where they chose not to provide a letter regarding their concerns about the timeline, but instead provided some really concrete recommendations through our strategic plan task force on specific elements that they would recommend that be added not only to the contract with AMR, but to all of the partner agencies that participate in the system. And right now, we are, sitting down with AMR, ready to move forward with the support of County Council and procurement, should that be needed, with the hope that this can be completed by December 17th on their their business, your business meeting. So I will hand it back to Mr. Swift. You're on mute, Rich.
Yep, sorry. So we are, quite a bit ahead of time. So I think what I'd like to do at this point is open it up for questions to the board. And because this is a very technical process. And I know that we have received, as Philip spoke, a number of letters from entities expressing concern about the timeline. So at this point, your questions, and if we need to pull folks in, we can certainly do that.
Well, we might want to consider pulling folks in. You mentioned a couple people who are here. So my question of Philip is, there were 11 issues that were of concern to the EMS Council. And my understanding is that 10 of those are addressed in this contract, correct?
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing, but there's 11 strategic planning priorities that are in the EMS strategic plan. The contract amendment does address those topics. The EMS Council did provide a very detailed memo, which lays out very specific recommendations. And perhaps, that might be an opportunity to hear from a couple of the EMS Council members that worked on that directly. But I think, in general, staff are supportive of those recommendations. And if that's something that the board would like to see us move forward with placing into the amendment, that would definitely be a worthwhile consideration.
Well, my understanding is AMR is willing to incorporate these. The one outstanding issue has to do with software. The software, which I think is called ESO, and AMR has meds. And there's some issues with when those, when they arrive, when they take the call. And I had an opportunity to talk to some folks about this. I also spent some time with the various union leadership on the phone last Friday to talk about their concerns, which really came down to, does an EMS, does this contract mean that there will be a lack of innovation, a lack of the ability to withdraw from the contract should certain metrics not be met? And having myself read this material today, it seems to me that I read where it's kind of 3 strikes and you're out, meaning that you go out for bid should they fail 3 times not to adhere to the agreement or fail. I also talked about auditing. They were interested in an audit, and that's also going to be in this agreement. So we have some other folks, Josh and Stephen, and anyone else from outside the commission who'd like to speak. Josh, you want to say something?
Yeah, I thank you, Commissioner Bernard. I drafted up something, if I could share it, right? I just typed up something that I felt would provide some background and be meaningful if you guys would take a few minutes and entertain that.
Sure. You want to bring it up on screen?
No, it's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and read to you that, and then hopefully it'll stimulate some conversation and some more, some further questions. So again, thank you guys very much. As mentioned, my name is Josh Santos. I'm the Medical Services Chief for Clackamas Fire, and I also serve as the chair of the EMS Council's subgroup, the ASA Strategic Plan Task Force. Before you is the recommended inclusion criteria for the proposed performance-based ambulance service agreement. This document was created by the EMS Council subgroup, the ASA Strategic Plan Task Force, and is reflective of the the EMS strategic plan development and the ongoing work since 2019. Since the inception, the task force has placed emphasis on creating a modernized county emergency medical services system that not only meets the demands of today, but is scalable to the future county growth and demand, takes advantage of the advancements in the healthcare system, and it provides focus on delivering sustainable and definitive treatment to the citizens we serve. It's strongly recommended by the council that the inclusion criteria be added to the amended ambulance service agreement, and that the commissioners continue to support and promote the ongoing work of the EMS Council strategic plan. I feel like it's necessary to provide a little bit of background on how we got to here, in addition to what was taking place. So in the ambulance service agreement currently that is existing expired in 2019, in May of 2019. It was decided then to grant the full 5 years extension, moving the expiration date to May of 2024. In conjunction with the extension and in an effort to avoid plateau, you, the commissioners, tasked the EMS Council with maintaining system improvement and to provide updates twice annually through through 2022. This completion date of 2022 was chosen as it fell within the timeline of the up to 2 years necessary to begin an ambulance service agreement RFP proposal process. So with this task, the ASA Strategic Plan Task Force was created, and that group was comprised of all of the EMS leaders from nearly all of the agencies in Clackamas County. So it included AMR, CCOM, LOCOM, Public Health, the county medical director, and then nearly all of the fire agencies. Once created, the task force first met in April of 2019 and began with a series of whiteboard exercises that stimulated brainstorming for the creation of a modernized and advanced Clackamas County medical services system. And I have to share with you here today that on that very day, there was a ton of energy and a ton of motivation and momentum, and so much so that Philip Mason Joyner put up a whiteboard exercise that we taped to the door, and we as a group sat before it and we took a picture. We took a picture of that entire group because we felt like that was going to be the memorialized picture of the beginning of the modernized and advancement in our county EMS system, and that in 2022 and beyond, we were going to always reflect back to that picture, and we were going to remember that moment because that was the beginning of really changing how we do business in Clackamas County and being maybe an industry leader. So we sat down, we brainstormed with a whole bunch of great industry innovation strategy concepts, but ultimately had to narrow it down and provide focus, which ended up being the 11 points of strategic improvement that we all know of and we share today. As had been mentioned, progress was made, momentum has been moving in the 11 areas of strategic improvement priority, but sadly COVID-19 took over in March and it delayed our progress significantly. Specifically delayed due to COVID-19 is the ambulance service plan review and update. The ambulance service plan is the blueprint for the medical services delivery in our county, and it ultimately impacts the direction and implementation of all strategic improvement and initiatives. So essentially the ambulance service plan is the driving force for all of the 11 strategic priorities that you have in front of you. We had with that, the group had prioritized that up to the front, said this is what's going to drive all of our innovation. So we need to complete an ambulance service plan review. So the task force drafted up a scope of work and has an RFP that's currently sitting in county procurement to hire an outside content expert consultant that would help us with, first of all, reviewing our current ambulance service plan. It would take a look at the current deployment models and then help us strategize how we'd implement the 11 areas of strategic improvement and maximize the opportunities in our county. So the task force feels that the completion of this ambulance service update is an instrumental component of any updated ambulance service agreement. And just to kind of share that framework of what this looks like, when you draft up a county EMS plan, you begin with an EMS plan, which is your county EMS leaders who understand the dynamic county that we're in, that has rural and urban, suburban, a diverse range of socioeconomic backgrounds. And they develop an EMS plan based on our resources so that we can we can provide meaningful work and sustainable work to the citizens we serve. Then you take and you develop an ambulance service plan that supports that EMS plan, and then the ambulance service agreements support the ambulance service plan and the EMS plan. And so that's where we're at today, is in the middle of that work of updating the ambulance service plan.
Josh, you need to finish up because we only have limited time.
Sure. Well, I guess what I can say based on that is the ambulance service plan is driving everything. And the EMS and the ASA strategic plan task force, who was tasked with creating innovations in our county and modernizing it, has placed priority on that. And that is the work that is still underway. So, I mean, I think with respects to putting together a meaningful ambulance service agreement that's lasting and scalable to the future demands of our county, we need to complete that body of work in order to have it drive our ambulance service agreement content and really lay out what that looks like. So I won't dredge on much farther with this, but I guess really in summary, we know that the demand is increasing in our county. We know that we are on the path of making significant improvement that will set forth the bar of high medical service delivery, and something we can really be proud of and work and continually scale to. And that we also know that this work is incomplete. And so as the chair of the task force, although we worked really hard and it was really inspiring to see this group of individuals from November 3rd, when we first got together, when we got notice of this performance-based contract becoming a thing January 1st, we were told that we needed to submit our recommendations by November 25th, which would be the day before Thanksgiving, which would then provide you, the commissioners, and the county staff time to evaluate that. And we met that deadline, and it was really inspiring to see the entire group come together on multiple sessions to develop that document that's there in front of you today. So although that document is meaningful and it should be included in any ambulance service agreement that we institute in this county, the work within it is still incomplete, and there's still a lot more work to be done to make sure that it's meaningful and accurate and scalable to the future. So I'm happy to answer any questions based on that. And I also have my colleagues here, Matt Dale and Steve Bowie, that can provide some content expertise as to how we got here.
Well, Paul, do you have a question of Josh?
I'm not sure it's for Josh per se.
Go ahead and ask a question.
So I'll just go ahead and ask the question because I see some people in the audience that probably can. So I'm just trying to put together the pieces of the puzzle here. And you know, I haven't spoken to all of you, but some of you have reached out and we've had conversations. So, you know, Matt Dale, you sent me an email. We chatted on the phone. In that email, you had a couple attachments, which included a work plan. And the work plan showed that up until around July of 2019, June, July 2019, it looks like the progress stopped on that work plan. So I appreciate, because my question was going to be, where did all that material come from? Josh, you answered that. So you did a lot of work to put that together, but I was trying to just assemble the pieces. So I also heard you say that the contract was renewed at that 5-year deal in May of 2019. And so there's one colored chart left on that work plan and the rest of it have not been fulfilled. So apparently there's been a lag period. And then several months later into the new year, then COVID hit. So granted, that played a factor. But I'm just kind of curious. I don't know if Mr. Conway can answer the question or someone, why the lag period on the work plan between what showed on the July 2019 up until COVID or post-COVID? It seems like nothing's happened.
Commissioners, Matt Dale, Canby Fire EMS Chair. The documentation that I sent you, Mr. Savas, was complete up until that point. We continued to meet on a quarterly basis, and those documents did not reflect updated dates. The work that we have presented to you is substantially complete up until the point where we need a outside consultant to lead us through the remaining work.
Okay.
And if I could tie into that a little bit, in fairness, the progression has not stopped, and maybe it hasn't been communicated effectively to the commissioners during this time, but it hasn't stopped. So, speaking specifically to a few of the areas in our 11 points of strategic improvement, single resource response is a focus of ours, and we have several pilot programs that have been in motion that are focused on sending an ambulance only or a fire engine only to some of these medical calls to try and maximize limited resources and proof concept that we can have that in our updated ambulance service agreement. And that was one of the questions that I recall when we presented to you guys on November 5th, 2019, which is our first and only opportunity as a task force to present to you. Commissioner Humberson asked specifically, he's asked, when are we going to get to the point where we can send a van to these medical calls and not send a fire engine and an ambulance to it? Well, the answer to that question is when we update the ambulance service agreement and the ambulance service plan to reflect that. And the task force has been working on proof of concept of those innovations. The other one that I'll share with you, and I'll leave it alone at that, just to kind of show work progression, is that community paramedic and community health. So we've worked through several different innovations with community paramedic response and trying to access the vulnerable population and weave that into our overall response model, because we know as population growth increases and our call volume increases, the majority of those calls end up being low acuity and non-emergent calls for service, and they don't really need the 911 system. What they need is definitive care for mental health, addiction, vulnerable, like homeless or elderly. And they ultimately get caught in the race of an ambulance and a fire engine responding to them, locking up those resources, which are expensive, that don't yield back revenue. And then we transport them to an emergency room where they don't get the care they need. They tie up a bed and it's rinse repeat. So we're working on that. And those innovations are in motion and they continue to have been. We just maybe haven't done the best job of communicating it to you.
Right. Okay. I know we don't have much time and I don't want to get too terribly in the weeds, but I just still want to say a couple things. And then I have another question. And that is that I think that we have been motivated to create a process or a system or a contract in which we do not have to have the great upset and debacle, if you want to call it that, from the 2014 round, whatever that was. Yeah, that was, and my colleagues that experienced that certainly don't want to see that again. And I think the public deserves better, frankly. And I know that that's probably not associated to anyone in this room right now that we're talking. So I don't want to pass that on. That is something that was caused by anyone here in the room. But so that's our motivation. So when I saw the packet, and this is probably more for our staff. When I saw the packet, I was waiting to see something because we've had nothing up until the packet came out. And I saw start reading down the line, and I saw all the work that you all did, Josh, that you kind of referenced. And then I got down to our PowerPoint, and I was thinking that we would see the contract language or maybe a red line version or strikeout version of all those additions being put in there, right? That's not there, okay? So I don't know what it is. And so whether I'm addressing Andrew or Philip or Mr. Conway or Rich, I'm not sure which, but I was a little bit struck that what's in the packet and page 2, I think, is that the recommendation says, go forward and put on the consent agenda. Well, I don't even have enough, frankly, to see if, and this is where I'm going, is that even if we got everything we wanted today, that everything we were cognizant of and we put it in there, probably 2 or 3 years from now, there's gonna be another idea and there'll be another innovation. And we're gonna always continue to refine that. So I believe whatever product we have has the on-ramps for innovation, clearly charted out, which I hope to see, frankly, in the board packet today, but it's not there because we don't have any contract language yet. And also the off ramps, call an off ramp or a ramp, that if we're not meeting those performance measures, that there's something that's brought to the county commissioner's attention or whatever it may be, with 3 strikes, whatever. I'm not sure what the mechanism is. I'm not suggesting any detailed mechanism at all, other than making sure that we have the on ramps and off ramps. So if we don't get it right away, I want to make sure that we have opportunities, real opportunities, to make those innovations as they're developed. Okay. And the timelines, we're in a crunch because, frankly, early of 2024 really means that we need to start at the beginning or the end of 2021 or the beginning of 2022. And that's a lot of work. However, if we can create the mechanism for the on-ramps for innovation and the off-ramps for performance measures, if you will, and call-outs, I think we can still get to all those innovations, ideally, I'm assuming. But frankly, my question to either Andrew or someone is that how much work is done? Do you have a red line version of the contract that you plan on putting these mechanisms in? I'm looking for it.
Yes, Commissioner, this is Andrew. We have a base amendment started, but from legal's perspective, we can't draft anything until we know what we're including in the contract. And right now, I don't know what we're including. I don't know what the metrics are. I know very broad outlines based on discussions, but without the direction of, what are these new performance-based metrics going to be? What are all the other sort of wish list amendments? There's only so much we can do in the abstract. And so, from council's perspective, we're looking for that clear direction of this is what we want to see in this amendment. And then we can certainly put pen to paper and get it drafted and start that negotiation. But until that happens, we really can't do too much.
Okay, well, not necessarily on the work of the EMS council or on the backs of the EMS council, but more on ours. I just expected that when we last spoke to you all in October, didn't have anything at the time, but October, that there would have been some progress with something. And I'm just curious what progress we've actually achieved, our staff specifically, other than the PowerPoint between then and now. And because what's that, 5 weeks gone by, 6 weeks have gone by?
So let me answer some of this. We don't have a lot of time. All 11 of these proposals were forwarded to AMR. They have agreed to all of them except for the software one, which they use MEDS, and this proposal is to use ESO, and they said that they are working with ESO to provide some sort of link, but right now the issue is when they arrive, when they receive the call, and whether they're meeting the metrics as required. So we have all this, that our lawyer has this. We just at this point need to say, do we want these 10, if it's not 11, in the contract, evergreen contract? And they just need to sit down with AMR and make sure they're comfortable with that.
So let me jump in, Commissioner Stavis, to answer your question. So we to honor the process and the EMS Council's work and what we've built as a foundational process, which is in many ways expressing the EMS Council, we were waiting for the EMS Council to forward their recommendations to us. It would have been precipitous of us to begin developing a lot of contract language without receiving first what they had to put together. And so this essentially now is looking for the green light from the board to for us to sit down with Andrew and AMR and begin the hard work of pounding this out. And there is no doubt that we are going to be spending probably pretty much all of our time between now and the 17th pounding this out. And but we wanted to honor the agreements we have with the EMS Council and the EMS community in the county in regards to their involvement in this process.
Okay, I'll just close with this because I know we're limited on time. I just want to close with this. I really think what's in order is something between the consent agenda and today. There needs to be some kind of a work session to see the product and go over it and make sure those on-ramps, off-ramps mechanisms that it's there. I don't want to do it on the dais.
And you nailed it with the off-ramps and on-ramps. That's actually a great metaphor for this. This is exactly, and those need to be clear.
All right, I have Sonia, Ken, and then Martha. Sonia?
Thank you, Chair Bernard. So Andrew, can we do agree to an evergreen contract, a performance-based contract, but not identify all of what goes in it and have that be done at a future date in collaboration with the EMS Council?
You can certainly come up with some sort of pause to reassess and renegotiate in the future, provided AMR agrees to it. My only caution about that is you have a lack of specificity about what is going to happen, and you're really just agreeing to negotiate in the future with something like that. So we can certainly discuss something like that. In the draft we're contemplating would have a lot of off ramps for certain events like changes in law, new ambulance service plans, council recommendations. But again, it's all subject to if AMR would agree to those sort of pauses where the whole contract is reopened up for another negotiation. And I don't know where they would stand on any of those sort of things. So we can always make the ask. Whether it's something anyone would agree to, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that whatever we do, we are doing it in collaboration with the experts from the EMS Council. And so I just don't want us to get ahead of ourselves. But I do think that having stability in the emergency system is very, very important. So what I understand from my colleagues who've gone through this before is that putting it out to RFP in a traditional process is destabilizing. If we can fix that piece, get as much of the performance standards that everyone agrees to potentially in the contract, and then create some flexibility for future improvements and discussion, I think that might be a way to meet everyone's need.
Ken and then Martha.
So it seems to me that there's no disagreement on the issue of a performance-based contract. The primary issue is making sure that everybody's in agreement on what the specifics are of the performance that is going to be required, and what the on-ramps and off-ramps are with respect to either changes in the future or our ability to walk away from the contract if we don't feel the performance is adequate enough. I agree with Commissioner Savas that this ought to be a standalone discussion and not part of a consent agenda. But I would still like to get it done. So is it possible for us to have a fairly complete list of what the performance standards are, and that the parties, both the county, the fire departments, labor, and management are all in agreement that these are what the standards should be, and get this done before the 17th? Because I think that's what we ought to try and do.
Martha?
I've been doing this for a while, and I think that Commissioner Fisher hit the nail on the head for me. I have no problem with an evergreen contract. However, I'm worried about the timing of it, and really having some more time to really negotiate some of those issues. My feeling is that, again, I want to rely on our EMS folks, but I'm wondering, the question I have for them is, why is there a need to hire an outside consultant? Normally that's only done when you do an RFP. I imagine then it is also done when you do an evergreen contract. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Schrader. I'm happy to answer that. Yeah, everything we were doing initially was pointing towards the 2022 beginning phases of an RFP. And then also, if you're going to move to a different performance measured type contract, it's great to get an industry professional to give us an outside look of it. In addition to that, that's not something that's ever been done in our county, as far as I know, being here since 2000. We've never hired an outside content expert to come give an unbiased approach and evaluation of our ambulance service plan and our system as a whole, and help us really guide our innovations in the right direction, so we're not stuck in our own narrow lens. So it was just really the task force's general approach to making sure we got a broad stroke and produce something that was really meaningful, innovative, and scalable.
Well, as I said, I think it's the RFP question for me, because I have found them contentious, hard, disruptive on both occasions when I have had to be involved in them. And what worries me, that disrupts the system. and it gives uncertainty in the system that's already here. And I like the performance-based methodology because it gives a clear expectation based on what your needs are, what you're seeing as our innovation needs and our further needs. So are you hiring, so did you just say you're hiring a consultant for specifically for an RFP
Negative.
purpose or no, in every, okay, I just
No,
wanted,
no,
I just
literally it was
wanted,
just to evaluate our system and probably still maybe even more so meaningful if we're going to move to a performance-based contract, because as we've done some research, the American Ambulance Association doesn't really, they don't advocate for evergreen contracts. So if we're going to get there, we should probably figure out how to make it meaningful.
okay. All right, I'm done.
Okay, Paul?
I'm worried about the quickness of the timeline, I'll be honest
Yeah.
with you, but I
yeah,
support an evergreen approach and I'm not going to waver from that. So I need to make that clear. For me, it's the timing and then giving people the opportunity who are experts. As Commissioner Fisher, I like what she had to say. Can we be clear that's what we want now? And then we're going to have to pursue it. And I know that some of the dilemma is we'll have a new board who will probably, one new member in particular who will probably have to be educated up to the speed of what these kinds of tussles entail. So.
Paul?
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, it just gives me a little bit of pause when I think about the word evergreen or the word forever, because we've got some emails about it.
Forever, because you have.
And it really, and if you build the performance-based program or the contract correctly, and someone's not performing, then it's really not really evergreen, nor is it forever.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's really important maybe to just talk about it in the context of it is a performance-based contract, not anything different than hiring a person, the county hiring a person or a small business hiring a person. Hey, you can work here forever, analogous to you can work here forever, but you know what? If you don't perform, you know, you'll be terminated. So essentially, that's really what we're doing here. It's not. I don't find comfort in the word evergreen per se or the word forever contract. It's performance based. I think if that is the principle that we're moving forward on, and you can get the work done and allow us an opportunity, a real opportunity to sit down in a work session to review the work product when it's done, talk to all the parties involved to make sure we're in a mutually satisfactory place where we all can agree. Then great. If we can get this done before the end of the year, fantastic. And again, I'm sure that that in the future, if it's built correctly, we can add innovations and other things in the future as they come up. And I just want to make sure that all those mechanisms are in place. But I'm not comfortable calling it evergreen or forever. Thank you.
All right, we'll change the name. So Gary, could we direct staff to complete let me just a second. Direct staff to complete a proposal for the Tuesday work session, the 15th.
So all materials are due a week in advance, which means staff, you have 7 days to finalize the contract, which means this is due next Wednesday, December 9th, for the board to then review on Tuesday, the 17th. And Tuesday the 15th and Thursday the 17th. So I need staff and our EMS friends, be direct here. Can you pull this off in 7 days? Yes or no? Speak up now, please.
Hey, Chief Santos, this is Chief Bowie. Can I have a little context here? Commissioners, I appreciate the time to speak with you. I too am very proud of the work that the Strategic Task Force did in a very short period of time to try to put together some recommendations for you. But I think the kind of questions that are coming from the commissioners, I think you're almost answering the question for yourself without me having to give it. The amount of work that entails to write a contract like this, to do it right, to provide for those off ramps, I find it very difficult to think that we can pull that off in 30 days, let alone 5 or 7. the ambulance service plan revision and update that Chief Santos spoke about is critical in trying to create what could be a great performance-based, not using the word evergreen, contract in the future for this county. We have the experts in front of you, along with some work from the consultant, would make a great package to be able to pull that off for you in an appropriate, very thorough and thoughtful way over a given amount of time. And I can't tell you what that time is, but I'm pretty confident, as someone that's been in EMS and emergency services for almost 30 years now, that it's not 5 or 7 days to do something that's so important to this community that we all serve in all of our cities that we serve within Clackamas County. But just like we did when we were given the task before, you know, we are compassionate professionals that will put our heads down and do the work. The product will be incomplete. The product will not get you where we need to get to provide us for a good roadmap and good innovation and good structure for the future of EMS in Clackamas County. And that's just my honest professional opinion. But I'm here to support the work of the Strategic Planning Group and the EMS Council for Clackamas County. So thanks for the time, and I appreciate you listening.
Richard? Philip?
You know, I'm always game for the real try. And, you know, Andrew and I talked briefly before this. You know, time is definitely of a concern. I think a piece of this is, I don't know how quickly AMR's legal counsel can move on this. We'd have to check with them. So what I'd like to do, instead of answering that question right now, is confer with Andrew, check with the AMR, and see what we can do in terms of turnaround time, given the time constraints that Administrator Schmidt articulated.
Okay. So get back to us on Tuesday.
Yep. Actually, we'll probably be back to you sooner than that, is my guess.
Okay. All right. Martha, you have your hand up. You're on mute.
Again, I keep getting muted and unmuted by staff. I am absolutely on board with the performance-based contract. I like calling it that. I think any other methodology in terms of disrupts the entire system, and I've been through it twice, and I know what it does. And I feel very strongly about that. But I'm still concerned about the timing and allowing our EMS specialists to finish what they'd like to do, being clear that we will head towards a performance-based contract. And I know there might be the uncertainty of a new commission, dare I mention, but I think I actually believe that we can get everybody on board and move forward with it. So my suggestion is to doing it too fast is making me very, very unsettled. So,
Sonia?
okay.
So why can't we do what Martha just said? Agree to a performance-based contract.
Right.
With what is all agreed to could go in there, but what isn't agreed to, we could leave open to be figured out in the future. Is that not possible?
Yeah.
I guess, Andrew, is that possible?
You can do an agreement to agree, which isn't really all that enforceable. But you could essentially just, you know, in the commercial world, be akin to like a term sheet. Say, these are what we're talking about, and we're going to negotiate in good faith towards these key points, and hopefully we can get there. You know, it wouldn't be something that could bind either party particularly, but it would certainly be an expression of everyone's intent, and we would have an obligation to pursue it in good faith.
So why wouldn't it, because right now the system is you go out for an RFP. If we as a board, the policy of the board is to do a performance-based contract, why wouldn't that be binding into the future? The terms of what the performance might be could be negotiated, but that is significant because it creates stability within the system. So what am I missing? I'm missing something here.
Yeah, no, I'm separating the contract piece and your authority as the board. And there are two different things. As the board, you have complete control over how you structure this franchise. That's in the ordinance. It's very clear that you can decide how you want it to be structured. In terms of just a contract with AMR, you know, we can agree to negotiate the terms of a performance-based contract with them, but that alone doesn't get you there by itself. So if everyone's willing to negotiate in good faith, that's fine. We can certainly do that. But just in general, agreements to agree are really just expressions of intent. So we can do that. But if somebody wants to balk at the end of it and walk out, they certainly can. But
Oh,
as the
you're talking so much like a lawyer.
I know,
So
it's a horrible
what
habit.
I'm wanting, my goal here is I can only say that to you because we share this like common thing here. But what I'm wanting to accomplish is to have a performance-based contract with the EMS Council's expertise and recommendation as to what they would, if there's consensus around certain performance standards, then great. Those could all be put in there, but what is left to be thought about, mulled over, because we want innovation, we want the best system possible. I want to leave that open for future conversations, but it would be nice to have this resolved. So that would be my goal.
Well, in the 11 proposals, innovation is part of those proposals, and in that allows the opportunity to insert innovative changes over time, because everything's changing. It will continue to change. Paul.
Yeah, I think maybe if I understand Commissioner Fisher's point, maybe another way of framing it is it not possible to design the language of the contract so that you're putting in solid off ramps and on ramps with a time certain to add the innovation as it's all developed if we run out of time before the end of the year? And it would seem that you could put in the on ramps and off ramps and those mechanisms and then get to the meat of it, which are some of the, some or all of the innovative ideas or the 11 points that at least have been established thus far, and get as many of them in there right now as we can. And those we don't have a time certain where they will be.
I don't see why you couldn't. Andrew?
Sure. I mean, we could attempt to do that. It sort of is dependent on what AMR will agree to. It does leave a lot of question marks as to what the future of those metrics would be. There's always the concern that we say we're going to do this and we end up not being able to agree with AMR on what those metrics look like. But, yes, we can draft it in a way that if we reach that sort of impasse, we would just terminate at the usual 2024 deadline and go through another process. So I think we could draft something along those lines.
Stephen, I'll call on you if you're just a minute.
Yeah.
You're on mute.
Yes, sir. I think the county attorney actually answered the question I was going to have. I just was trying to get clarification because it's a question we've had all along about the off ramps, as you call them, and the on ramps. That it was my understanding that in order to open up a contract for changes, that the party had to agree to it, number one. And we were also told that for large amendments that the commission would actually have to vote in order to make those amendments happen in the contract. And the attorney kind of touched on that. And I guess that's the concern about how you get the on ramps down the road when we finish the proper work that we need to do, is the how strong are the on ramps, right? How easy is it to get on those on ramps? How strong are they? How binding are they? And I think the attorney kind of touched on that. That's kind of a delicate area. It's not 100% clear if I'm understanding you, Andrew.
All right, so let's see what you can come up with. Let us know as soon as possible. Look, I'm just trying to help the citizens of Clackamas County and you future commissioners, who I will guarantee will go through hell when if this ever goes out to an RFP. And it's, I've talked to the fire district, to the union membership. Their concerns, I think, can be addressed in this agreement. I just want to get this done before I leave. And if not, that's your problem, not mine. But I live in this county and I care about what this contract says, and it protects all the residents of Clackamas County, and it protects those Teamsters that work at AMR. It protects you guys, provides innovation and a guarantee for the future. If they meet the standards, they improve innovation, it will happen, and they can, as long as they meet those performance standards. Evergreen is just a word I picked out of the sky. And so let's see what we can do. And Stephen, Richard, let me know, and Philip.
We will do that
as soon as possible, but I'd sure like to see this done before I leave. Again, what happens in the future will be on your backs, not mine. I'm just trying to make your backs, the weight on your shoulders.
We'll roll up our sleeves, Chair Bernard, I promise you that. And also, one thing that did not come up in this, you know, from the standpoint of the residents, the price component, one of the things that an RFP does guarantee is that your price will go up. And Multnomah County saw that. They had a 33% price increase when they last did an RFP. And when we get complaints about the system, often majority of those all center around how much it costs to be transported. So.
Well, yeah, you know, I know Paul said no one's in this room that should be blamed for the last fiasco, but I am in this room and I'm to blame partially for the last fiasco, and I will take that blame. But I'll tell you what, we got a better contract because of it. And now if we push hard, we can get a better contract before the end of the year. And I'd like to see that happen. So that's it.
Right.
All right.
So respectfully, I don't hear direction from the board. I hear the chair's opinion. So what option are you asking for, commissioners? 1, 2, or 3 in your staff report? You're muted.
I heard Rich say he's going to get back to us and see what's possible.
Right, so Rich is going to check on timing and report back to me, and I'll update the full board. Yes, we'll hold a policy session on Tuesday, December 15th. And I propose a discussion item, not consent agenda, for Thursday, December 17th. We'll have 2 placeholders ready to go, but we'll hear back from Rich this week on the look, I know I get a staff, we all want to please the board, but we have to be realistic here and give the board our realistic opinion on what can be done and what can't. So we will report back to you this week on what can and cannot be done, and then we'll have those 2 placeholder sessions in 2 weeks.
All right. Thank you, Gary.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and our guests. All right, we're going to move on to our next session as we switch our presenters. Next is Deferred Compensation Plan Document Update. We have Christy Durham, Benefits Manager from Human Resources, who will present. So Christy, there you are. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and County Administrator Schmidt. Appreciate your time today. What we're looking at today is bringing forward some plan document revisions for the deferred compensation plan. The changes and what we're specifically looking for is for your approval of those changes. The changes have come about from 3 different sources. One, at the end of 2019, the Secure Act passed, and the overall goal of the Secure Act was really to encourage participation, preserve savings, and really get more opportunities for retirement savings throughout a variety of communities, underserved communities. A couple of those provisions, there are mandatory provisions in there, and then there were some optional provisions. We have until the end of this year to implement those changes in our plan document. And we had anticipated that potentially we would hear more guidance from the federal level throughout the summer. We didn't hear any. So we are moving those forward. And another one of the events that has occurred is the 2020 CARES Act. And we all know a lot about that. A couple of the provisions related in that also included provisions for deferred compensation plans or other retirement plans. And so with both of those, the Deferred Comp Committee has convened a number of times throughout this past year, has reviewed those optional changes, and has consulted with our plan advisors. And we are recommending implementing some of those optional changes as outlined in the options that we presented to you. The third thing that has come about is that as we were looking at our plan documentation, we realized that this was also a good opportunity for us to just do a little housekeeping, bring some of the language more up to date and more aligned with industry best practice. So those are the 3 areas. Those are the 3 things that have occurred. And so we wanted to make sure that we wrap those all up together rather than doing them piecemeal. And we'll bring those forward to you today in totality to restate those plan documents and move them forward in the next year. That's the high-level summary for you. Do you have any questions, or would you like additional information in any areas?
Is there any dissent, or is everyone good to go?
I'm good to go.
Well, I'm asking Christy from in her world, the employees, labor, is everyone on board?
Yes, everyone is on board. It's fully vetted.
Okay. I'll second Ken's motion.
Which is to approve option 1, to be specific. You're muted, Jim.
Was I muted during that last conversation?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Christina, please poll us.
All righty, Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertston,
Aye.
Travis,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
and Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Gary?
Now you're ahead of schedule, commissioners. This is fun. All right, so I know that Samara is here, but I'm not sure if the rest are here. So let's see who's here. So the next session, commissioners, is Clackamas County Arts Alliance seeks a unified board. We have Samara Phelps, our tourism executive director, and other guests to present. I'll ask Samara to introduce our guests and tell me first, though, if they're all here or not. Samara. You're on mute, Samara.
All right, I think we're just waiting for Kevin.
So Gary, I have an observation, a question before we get started on these next two. And I want to point out to my colleagues, when I read the packet on these last two, I found it a little odd that in one work session here, we're asking to dissolve a board-appointed committee, and the other, we're asking to create a board-appointed committee because neither of them work in both instances for whatever reason. So I just want to just better understand that. My historic concern about some of the board-appointed committees sometimes is they get to be political appointments, and I don't favor political appointments, but I just want to point out that you're all going to need to explain why the change. So in a comprehensive way that explains and doesn't oppose the next presenters for the next session. There's got to be some consistency here in the county.
So I'll answer that. As you know, commissioners, you need to approve the creation of and dissolution of any advisory board or commission to you, the county commissioners. So today you have two extremes of that. This first one is seeking your approval to dissolve one of your advisory boards, and the second session is to create an advisory board. So this is just a recommendation to you. You can accept it or not, but there's some really thoughtful work behind this Arts Alliance proposal, which is in the materials in which you'll hear about today. So I hope you'll at least give it a hear through and see if that's something you want to pursue. So with that, may we begin?
Yes.
So Clackamas County Arts Alliance, Samara, if you could please kick it off, introduce our guests, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Administrator Schmidt. Thank you, commissioners. For those that don't know, I'm Samara Phelps. I'm the Executive Director of Tourism and Cultural Affairs, and we act as the liaison to the Arts Alliance. And it is my pleasure to welcome the Arts Alliance Advisory Council, as was just discussed, and the Arts Alliance itself to share the results of their work and their recommendations to better connect you with the arts and culture community here in Clackamas County. We're joined today by Will Frank, who's the chair of the Arts Alliance Advisory Council, and Kevin Yell, who's the Arts Alliance Board President, as well as Diane Alves, who is the Arts Alliance Interim Executive Director. And what's being presented to you today is a result of over a year's worth of work to connect with both the Advisory Board Council and the Board for the Arts Alliance and the arts community. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Will Frank, who is the chair for your Arts Advisory Council.
You're on
mute, Will.
There. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm unmuted apparently, so that's good. My name's William Frank. I live up in Welches, up on the mountain, and I have been the chair of the Arts Alliance Advisory Council for the past 3 years and have been served on the council for the last 6.5 years. The purpose today for us, for this meeting is kind of strange. We're asking to dissolve, but we're really not going away. However, I'd like to give you, because we are formally appointed by the, by your, the BCC, as Gary mentioned, we need to go through the appropriate steps if we choose to dissolve. So based on the work we've been doing over the past 1.5 years, we've come up with the suggestion that we'd like to dissolve the advisory council. So let me give you a little bit of a background. The advisory council is kind of the eyes and ears of the arts and culture community throughout Clackamas County. We serve all the way, obviously, from government camp to Lake Oswego. And the way we have been structured over the past 6 or 8 years is we have representatives from various parts of the sort of geographically selected individuals from across the county. And that way we keep the entire county, not just the busy cities, but also the unincorporated areas like the villages where I live, engaged in the conversation around arts and culture. We generally met 4 times a year under the guidance of the previous executive director, Cheryl Snow. We'd meet 4 times a year. We'd share what's going on in each of our communities. We'd provide feedback, and occasionally we would have work projects. Once a year, we would get together with the board. And that was kind of the rare occasion when we got to meet the movers and shakers of the folks that controlled the money and had sort of the strategic direction that we were following. And that, of course, was with the Arts Alliance. It's an example of some of the work that we've done most recently, and I'll say most recently by meaning, say, within the past 5 years. We were engaged in what we called the State of the Arts conversations, which was, I think, a real fruitful exercise. It was real work, and our team of 13 or so advisory council members would, each community, for instance, Welch's, in my case, I would serve the mountain community. We, for the State of the Arts meetings, we would bring together a large variety of stakeholders. In my case, it might include the Forest Service, the Resort at the Mountain, Timberline Lodge, in addition to some of the arts practitioners, the artists, the photographers, the theater people, the musicians. And we would gather and have a conversation about what's going well, how can we support the arts, what's missing. We generated a lot of data, and we did that throughout the county. And those documents that summarize each of those meetings, whether it was in Lake Oswego or Happy Valley or Milwaukee or Wilsonville, is now part of a larger document that talks about the state of the arts. So some of the good work that came out of that, for instance, besides the arts, besides those conversations and relationship building, was also things like the cultural guide that you all see in the Pamplin media that would come out quarterly. That was a result of the state of the arts conversation that we had out in Lake Oswego. So these are some of the tangible work that we were doing over the past years. A couple years ago, there was a change in leadership. The executive director retired, I should say, and we moved into a transition phase. And not unlike many organizations, when you're going through a leadership change, we started to reevaluate where we're going, what we're doing, are we serving our initial purpose? There was a search for a new executive director. She was put in place for a period of time. That didn't work out. There were budget issues that were being addressed that were new challenges. Oh yeah, and then there was this pandemic thing. So as a result of a lot of this turbulence, we continued under the direction of Kevin Yell, the board of the chairman of the board of the Arts Alliance. We moved forward with strategic planning and had facilitated session back in February where we started to look at how are we doing our work? What can we be doing differently? As a result of that, there was the conversation that maybe we should unify our board with members of the advisory council. And I'll be honest, the advisory council was meeting 4 times a year. When we had a task to do, like the state of the arts meetings, or like some of the other tangible activities that we were involved in, then there was enthusiasm. But when we would just be information sharing about what's going on in each of our communities, sometimes it felt like we weren't getting as much done as we could. Now that's my personal perspective, but I think that it also plays into the reason that we're looking for a new way to move forward as the Arts Alliance. So we've come to the place after the facilitated strategic planning sessions, the concept of working toward a what we'll call a unified board, expanding the size of the board of the Arts Alliance, formally dissolving the advisory council, but some of those members of the advisory council, no doubt, are still engaged in the world of arts and culture and still have expertise and interest in serving, and will be considered as joining the board. But there will be, some people may not choose to, wish to be on the board. The new structure that we're looking at, with the board at the center, around that would be what we're calling a committee structure, that just as in the past, we were sort of geographically designated members. Now we're looking at having a set of art and culture disciplines that would be, we'll call them committees, that will be tasked with doing work that will be focused on their particular discipline. Maybe it's in the visual arts, maybe it's arts organizations. Sandy, for instance, has a brand new arts commission. Wilsonville has a very vibrant, relatively new arts commission also. So we want those organizations to have a place that can convene them and share the trials and successes that each are experiencing. And that would be the target of that particular committee. Others might be involved with performing arts, visual arts, and some of the other structures. So I guess the big ask is the formal dissolution of our advisory council, since we were formally appointed by the county commissioners. And at the same time, a letter of support for the new structure, the Arts Alliance. And Kevin can talk a little bit more, or Diane, who is our new interim executive director. So I'll leave it at that at this point and turn it over, Kevin or Diane, if you have, what else can I say, or what can we add that would clarify or help with the commissioners to understand where we're coming from.
Kevin?
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. The Arts Alliance and the Advisory Council both began together as organizations within the county. And as you know better than I do, I think maybe 10, 12 years ago, the Arts Alliance went out and became a separate 501c3, but the Advisory Council stayed within the structure of the county. I think around that time, the county itself, having used the Advisory Council, I believe, quite extensively when art was being discussed and purchased for the establishment of the campus where the offices all are. But really since that time, really since Will had joined, the county itself has not been engaging with the advisory board. The Arts Alliance has been doing that, as it were, on your behalf, but there's been no specific questions. There's not been a, well, for various reasons, like the financial downturn, the recession, various other things, you all have had many other important things on your mind. There's not been a new arts and culture policy decision and things like that. And so the Alliance has carried on working with the Advisory Council and continue to have a dialogue. But what's happened in the last, especially 5 years, is that there's been a lack of energy. And then as you all know, and as Will mentioned, with Cheryl Snow's retirement, the Arts Alliance board and structure had to go into a rather overdue reevaluation of what we're doing in the county, who we're working with and how. And one of the realities of that is that we recognize we had become a very, and always had been, as the nature of organizations, a top-down organization. We had carried out from the county a similar structure into being a 501c3. And what we lacked significantly was any ground organization. We did not have a great level of ownership across the county. It was mainly at the committee levels. So what we as the Arts Alliance have been looking at for the last 2 years is how do we change the nature of how we work to be more in tune with the arts communities and the organizations across the county. As the Alliance, as the Advisory Council, we're also then asking themselves similar questions. It seemed that both organizations needed to have a better understanding and relationship with the active artists and arts communities and organizations across the county so that both of us could do our job, which we feel is very much on the same track. It therefore became clear in our discussions over the last 2 years, and especially the last year, that if we joined together, we would bring the best of both worlds into unity. Seeing as the county itself has not actively been engaged in the Advisory Council, it appeared to us that, because I believe you have something like 70 advisory councils across the organization. And it seemed to us like, well, if this is one thing that you wouldn't notice if it went away, we could make great use of the people and also do the same job. Now, in saying that, that wasn't to try and separate us from the organizational structure of the county, but just try and make it more effective. My hope is that maybe one day, rather, as I was reading in the Business Journal today about the new art center in Beaverton, that one day the county would find a bit of land and maybe build an arts and civic center where everything could come back under the umbrella of maybe a county organization, and that the arts, culture, and history would actually find a new home in the county, maybe in 5 or 10 years' time. But that's not a reality for the moment. Our target at the moment is to have a much higher buy-in at the ground roots level. And to do that, we want to be able to build the relationship between the structure at the center and the people living right across the county, as well as doing it geographically, but also doing it by arts discipline. That way, over the coming 3 to 5 years, we should be able to establish a very active dialogue within the county, both up and down and laterally. So that's the hope, that's the dream. The long term, yes, not that we've actually discussed it as a board, but the long term hope would be a bigger, stable arts and cultural center for the county, because I think that would serve a lot of people very, very well. But first step is to make it an active organization, to actually give people jobs and work, and then feed that back into the center.
Thank you both for that. If people are all right, let's go ahead and turn it over to the commissioners for questions and clarification while we have this great brain trust of this work around the arts engagement.
Gary, you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to thank Will and Kevin. I just want to tie a bow on what they just said. So the advisory council is advisory to the Board of Commissioners, appointed by the Board of Commissioners. And frankly, they haven't advised you in 5 years. The Arts Alliance is a nonprofit of which you give general fund to every year. And the Arts Alliance staffs the advisory council on behalf of the county. So really, we're just condensing this into what has been in reality working, where the Arts Alliance now becomes your advisory board. As of now, we're still paying them general fund contribution. The advisory council is dissolving, but kind of merging with the Arts Council, and that is a request for you today. So I'm just trying to tie the bow on what you just heard. Thank you.
You need a motion? Oops, Sonny, you got your hand up.
So I'm trying to look at this big picture, and arts and culture are critical to economic development. And over the last, since I got this packet, I've been trying to piece together the history of the changes that have happened over the last years and years and years. And the piece that I think could be a real loss to policymakers is that advice for arts and culture as it relates to economic development. And so I understand at some point there was a decision to put the Clackamas County Arts Alliance under tourism. I don't know necessarily why that happened. It seems like it would have been best as part of business and community services. And there really seems to be that there should be a place within our Economic Development Commission to have arts and culture woven in there as an economic generator, because we all know that the arts are a very significant part of our economy, and they need to be a driver, and they need to be nurtured, and they need public-private partnership. So I'm concerned about future boards and there not being a presence that's within government that is structurally advising the commission. So just because the board over the last 5 years didn't activate the advisory council, that doesn't mean that it wasn't necessarily important or that there wouldn't be a place for that in the future. So it just concerns me. The other piece to think about is the Clackamas County Arts Alliance is a nonprofit, which means they decide who's on their board. We would have the commission as the structure of government would not have any impact, say, or involvement in that. So that's a disconnect that also concerns me. I just think, honestly, you guys, I think arts and culture is too important to not have some link that's structural and advisory to not only this commission, but future commissions. So I'm not sure how to build that together in a nice structural piece, but yeah, I wish I could have been part of some of the strategic planning that went on. I would have liked to have been part of that journey. Didn't know that was going on in the midst of all of our pandemics and the challenges that we've had. But I'm not ready to agree to this today. I'll just let you know. I think it's too important. It takes more thinking. And I'm not ready to just delegate it out of county government. Arts and culture is too important. That's my thoughts.
All right, Kevin.
May I respond? Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. I really appreciate everything you just said. I agree with everything you just said. And personally, and also as president of the Alliance, would be delighted to have an ongoing and deeper conversation, including talking about whether this happens or not. And if, for instance, the commissioners would like to have designated seats, one option might be having so many designated seats on our board and in the working committees, if such a structure was feasible in the way the county works, which I don't know. But just want to say thank you for what you said, because we are trying to find a way that can sustain us. From our fundraising point of view, as our administrator said, we do receive a chunk of cash from you every year, and that's been absolutely vital, especially in these last few years. One of the things that's held us back from getting more funding from the general public as well as foundations is because we are a top-down organization. We don't have that that reach into the lived lives of the community, which is what the foundations are looking for, but also we don't have that level of ownership. So I'm some sort of hybrid organization that has both the connection to the roots as well as to central government would be brilliant. And I'm sorry we haven't come up with a perfect solution, but we would all be delighted to have a further conversation about it, because it's all about getting the right end product that serves everyone, but also feeds everyone. And funding is a major part of that.
So Paul and then Ken.
Yeah, I was trying to, like I said, I was really mulling this over when I saw that, as I mentioned earlier, when I saw the two items and trying to understand what that was. And I think that having, I guess I use housing, for example. If we have a series of nonprofits and they're all doing some element of housing, whether they're providing services or they're building housing, great, that's the housing world. But we also have committees that are appointed by the Board of County Commissioners to be, whether it's policy guidance or whatnot. And there is that firewall of separation between the operational dollars that the nonprofits would see or not see and the county commission that may or may not be providing that. But we also have this advisory group that is, ours, so to speak. It's our resource for information without bias, without influence of resources or desire for resources, or where the resources are spent. And each nonprofit has that autonomy, so to speak. In this case, it sounds like there's, the Clackamas County Arts Alliance, which is doing probably the lion's share of the work in the county. But I'm sure that there are probably folks that maybe are not connected to the Arts Alliance and that are either involved in the culture aspect or the arts aspect that, may have, I'll say a role, or they exist out there perhaps. I don't know, maybe I could ask for your help and insight on this question. But I think what Commissioner Fisher is trying to get through is somewhat similar to what I've been trying to mull over, is how do we know, again, using that housing piece, how do we know what that unattached, unbiased opinion is on something that's policy related towards housing, if you will. And then the same would be apply here. But is there any other organization or groups of people or interest that are attached to arts and culture and/or culture that are not associated with either of these two bodies?
If I may, one of the obvious ones, one group, is the arts commissions and councils that many of the cities have. I think there are 6 or 7 across the county, all of which were founded in one way or another by our help as the Alliance, either since we left the county or even, but I think Lake Oswego's case, while we were still located within the county. So yes, there are definitely the arts councils and commissions. There are, in the last 10 years, certainly even 5 years, several also large groups. There are like the Three Rivers Artists Guild and things like that. So there are networks that we try and link with, and our administration, our staffing has done a great job to try and build out those links. And part of the vision was to try and formalize those relationships. So you'll see in the diagram that Diane created for us, the 5 working groups or working committees that we established. One of those is just a committee for the groups like the Arts Alliance, the Arts Councils and commissions across the county, to bring together representatives of the different groups. So they just get to talk with each other as a group across the county. Performing arts, we have the Willamette Falls Symphony Orchestra. They never get drawn into a discussion with the theatre companies. And the theatre companies, we've had 2 meetings with all of them in my time as chair, but there's nobody bringing them together to have a conversation. So this is not, the only way of doing it, but we've tried to step out into new territory to be, and the word we're using is a hub, to bring together people to create conversations. And if we can create more conversations, we'll create more ownership and then hopefully also more ideas. I'm sure I speak for everyone on the board and on the advisory council. If there's a way of building that into a structural, useful to you relationship with the county commissioners structurally, we would be delighted with that, because this all works only when you have the synchronicity of all the pieces coming together rather than bits and bobs in different places. So that's part of what's driving this, to try and create a cohesive whole. If we don't have the right proposal at the moment, then that's fine. But the target is to try and create at least a better version that we can then evolve and support one another.
Yeah, and I thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate that. I think, similar, and another one is obviously the TDC, the work they do, right? And so we have a lot of people that want to apply for grants and everything like that. And we sometimes found ourselves bombarded in the past, and we could use the TDC maybe as a filter for that. Whereas advisory council could be a filter for all the other people that are interested in arts and culture and active in that. So that is, I think we want to avoid, having all those different bodies or organizations come to us one at a time individually, and being filtered through a advisory council or committee is maybe one means of sorting that out in an equitable way.
The one thing to note is that the advisory council has no staff. So one of the reasons that the Arts Alliance is very involved is whenever they wanted to do something, we were happy to, but we provided the staff time, the money, the facility, organized things like that. So we historically have been the servants to the advisory council, and it's worked in the past, but I think there's the better way of setting a relationship around that. The advisory council, if it's going to do the work, needs staff, and there's no funding for that, so we have the funding. We do also work, just so you know, with the Cultural Coalition, and on the art side of things, that's where we are as their fiscal agent. We also provide staff support to them, so that the money they get from Oregon Cultural Trust can be disseminated to arts organizations through the county. And then we also work, of course, with young audiences for the schools, and also with RAC.
Thank you.
So Ken, and then Gary.
All right, so as I want to do, I'll try to cut to the chase a little bit here. I heard nothing in the discussion that would prevent a cooperative agreement with the Arts Alliance from also providing advisory information to the county commission. So that could be built into any agreement that that follows after a decision is made here. And I would submit that the model that we've used with the Fair Board, the model that we've used with Tourism Development Council as a couple of examples, where you have a commissioner who is a liaison to, this would be the Arts Alliance, provides a perfectly good avenue to get information back and forth between the County Commission and the Arts Alliance, and from the Arts Alliance back to the County Commission. So we have a model, and it's already workable, and I know at least two independently financed boards that also get some funding from the county commission, works perfectly fine. Since they've done this work to conclude that they can better serve the arts community effectively as the Arts Alliance, and still serve the board in an advisory capacity, I think we should honor the work that they've done and move this forward. Just build into the agreement the needs of the county commission going forward.
Gary?
If commissioners, you choose to retain the advisory board, I probably would suggest we staff it internally at a county department rather than the Arts Alliance, like Commissioner Fisher was suggesting. There are multiple ways we could do that. So that is an option for you to consider as well. I would not expect our Arts Alliance friends to have to staff it as they have been if you retain it. This is taking much more conversation than I predicted, and we're almost out of time. So I'm not sure there's consensus yet on what you'd like to do, commissioners.
Doesn't sound to me like they're ready to make a decision on this issue. Can we just bring it back someday in the future?
Yeah, we can punt and keep it as is. But again, I want to thank our boards. They came up with a really thoughtful recommendation that took almost a year's worth of work. So I would not want to dismiss that work, but rather ask, what else do you need, commissioners? I mean, I've heard some feedback today already.
Well, I would move that we take the recommendation. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Now, is there any further discussion? Tanya, then Martha.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I still so confused when I'm on my iPad instead of my computer, so I apologize. I think it's too important to governance for the county to not have advice from a group. And so I will not be supporting this proposal. And I would rather have us, I looked through the materials. I would like to see what is our vision for Clackamas County in the arts. I would like to see that defined. I'm not sure what the strategic planning process is, but we should really look at what is the economic drivers, what is the community basis and the grassroots organizing, and how do we build this? Because one of our strategic initiatives is a vibrant economy, and this absolutely fits in growing a vibrant economy. And you know what? We're recreating, you guys, out of COVID. We are rebuilding, and we can redesign and rebuild better than before. And it takes more engagement, not punting it, and less engagement. So I am not ready to have government not have a solidified, legitimate role in the arts. So that's my thought.
Martha.
Yeah, I actually don't see us not having that, actually, whether or not it's an advisory board directly to us or a nonprofit. It's going to be one of the keystone nonprofits that we have in this county, like Clackamas Women's Center, like the Children's Center, like other groups that have are nonprofits, but we have a direct contact with them on a regular basis. And we can do liaison work with them on a regular basis. So I'm willing to go forward because of the group's work. But I don't see it though as really going to have us not be influenced or lessen the influence we have and that they have with us in terms of looking at it the way we look at the other nonprofits we work with. I mean, we have liaisons to Clackamas Women's Services. We have liaisons to the Workforce Board. We have liaisons to various things. So we could set up a liaison piece. I don't think you folks would mind that, would you? Particularly having a commissioner liaison regularly attend or be part of it. That would be a real direct connection. So that would be my suggestion. And so because of that, I think we can move forward. But that's just my opinion. So,
yeah, well, I'm just going to go back to my concern and my point, and I think there are too many. It sounds like Kevin mentioned some of those. Too many organizations out there that need to be linked together in a hub. Call it a hub, if you will. And a liaison for the county can't really do that. I don't think the analogy of the fair board is a good one, because there's only one county fair by state law. There's only one. There's not several county fairs. So in this aspect, I think that having some kind of a hub that brings them all together might be a better model. But absent that, we have ideally an advisory committee or council that is unattached, who can help us filter and advise us as we need to on these issues. And they can be maybe the recipients from all these other groups for information or ideas or whatnot. So granted, I think that the work is good, and maybe we just continue the work to get to a better place. But I think I can't support it today because I think I really want to have that resource at hand, that unfettered resource.
All right, let's just go ahead and poll us, and then we can, you guys can kick it down the road, I guess, and make some decisions what you want to do in the future. So Christina, please poll us. I don't hear you. You seem to be muted, but you don't show you're muted.
Okay, is that working now? Okay, just mute and unmute. It works again. Commissioner Fisher?
No.
Commissioner Humbertston?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
No.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
And Chair Bernard?
I'm kind of a no. I think we got some things to work out and then make the decision.
Okay.
Meet with the commissioners and work it out and see if you're ready to go on or not. So no.
Okay.
Oh, it fails.
It's okay.
If I can say one, I want to say one thing is really important. I want to thank all of you, members of the commission and the council and the Arts Alliance. I want to thank you for your work. So this is not anywhere near a goodbye. This is not the end. This is the beginning, I think, of a great conversation, because you have brought to light some very important issues before us. So I feel a lot more educated about what we're all facing. And I just again want to say thank you for your work, and let's work together on this. I want to go forward.
All right, you got the message.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well
thank
said,
you.
Paul. I agree with that. Thank you. Good job, you guys.
Gary, was there a second part of this?
No, that's all. So Samara, I'll talk with you and Will and Kevin offline. We'll wait till the new board's seated and we'll revisit it with them. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you all.
All right, next session is request to establish the Public Health Advisory Council. We have our public health staff from Health, Housing, and Human Services, namely Philip Mason Joyner, Public Health Director. Well, Philip, I hope you've been listening here. So this, I hope, will be an easy one here. So go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Good to be back. Hope you're not tired of me today, and glad to close out your meetings. Christina, I do have slides like usual to walk through this. So today I am here to present you with a request as your fairly new public health director to establish the Public Health Advisory Council to be a board appointed advisory board to the Clackamas County Board of County Commissioners. Since 2012, the H3S Public Health Division has had a Public Health Advisory Committee that has been advisory to the Public Health and H3S directors. And I think the COVID response and our work that we have moving forward into the future, it's really critical. And now is a better time, more now than ever, to move forward with this change. Next slide, please. As Clackamas County Board of Commissioners, just to set a foundation here, you are the Board of Health. You have had probably the busiest year ever in your role as the Board of Health in 2020. And this is directly out of state statutes in terms of your responsibility, that you are the health policy making board of the county, that you can adopt rules necessary to carry out those policies. One of the caveats being that you can adopt rules and policies, but they can't be inconsistent and they can't be less strict than state law. And that you may adopt fee schedules for carrying out public health services. And that's something you do regularly through things such as our environmental health inspection fees that we set. Next slide. And just to share for the community, Clackamas County Public Health, we have a whole lot of services. We are not just COVID infectious disease contact tracers. We have a lot of services that are critical to the health and well-being and improvement of our communities. We are continue to be a great place to work, to live, and to play. Things from maternal child health programs, such as our WIC program, the work that we do out in communities with partners to improve the built environment, our data work, our evaluation work, the outreach and education that we provide the public. We also investigate and respond to over 40 infectious diseases that are of concern, not just COVID-19. We provide the oversight for emergency medical services. We respond to public health emergencies. We do a lot of environmental regulatory health work and a whole lot more. Next slide, please. And then the role of the Clackamas County Public Health Advisory Council. I'd say this is proposed. In your packet, you have bylaws, which we have worked on, but really to advise the Board of County Commissioners and public health staff in activities, strategies, and priorities to advance our community health improvement goals. This council would review and develop reports and help make sure that our publications are really in alignment with public health standards, that they would be that community voice into our programs and services, making sure that we have connections, relationships, linkages, and networks across sectors and with partners that are serving priority populations, that they would help us lift and move our community education engagement efforts forward. That something that we established a few years ago was actually having this advisory committee serve as an ethics committee, that we would bring forward issues, concerns, emerging issues that are of concern to the community's health, and that we would actually have a facilitated deliberation where we would review the pros and cons of different decisions that we may make. And also a role, within helping to advocate for strong policies and systems that improve the health of Clackamas County. Next slide, please. Something really fundamental that the PHAC, the Public Health Advisory Council or Committee, has had a direct role in is really helping us with our blueprint for a healthy Clackamas County planning efforts. So this is, in public health and all county divisions and departments, we have our Performance Clackamas Managing for Results plans. And we see that very much as our internal strategic business plan. And then this is really our external work, the work we do outside of the walls of our buildings with partners. And it really does lay out the priorities of our external work that we do out in communities, and is a great way in which we convene and bring folks together to try to have a collective impact to move some of these priorities forward based on the data, what the data shows us, what we hear from the community of what their top concerns and needs are. And as we move forward in our COVID response and build towards recovery, trying to create even better communities, this work, these efforts are going to be more important than ever. Next slide, please. So the ask for you today is a request to change the PHAC, the Public Health Advisory Council, from a committee to a council. We do have bylaws in the packet. They have been reviewed and approved by County Council. We have been working closely with our public and government affairs staff on the administrative processes and the recruitment plans. It'll be similar to how all the other ABCs are approached in terms of those planning efforts. And we are excited about moving forward with some recruitments to identify up to 17 individuals that represent these different sectors that can serve on our council. And right now we have about, I believe it's 12 members that are part of the committee. Some of them have been on it for several years, likely will not continue. Some of them are very, very interested and would need to apply in order to serve. And I'm happy to answer any of your questions that you have. Yes, straightforward request, I hope today, to move forward with this change.
I'd like to take the bylaws out and tear them all apart and see if we can recreate them. Spent about 1.5 years doing it, or maybe. Just kidding. Paul?
Well, I'm glad you said that, Jim. I just thought maybe in your retirement, we can appoint you to the bylaws committee, and you can redo all our bylaws for the county.
No, please.
Only if you want to get them done in 3 days max.
Yeah, 3 days.
Good. Hey, so Philip, I read through there. Can you give me just 1, 2, or 3 examples of what we have today? What's the pros and cons? What would be remarkably different, significantly different between the committee and the council?
Sure. From my perspective, it helps formalize the recruitment process. It allows us to have access to PGA's resources to help us with that. Right now, I'd say it's very relationship based on our existing network. We've struggled to have really good community resident active participation in our council. And I think part of that is we reach out to partner organizations that we already know and have relationships with. This also allows the council to have a formal pathway to the commissioners. Right now, doesn't necessarily exist. I mean, I can bring the concerns up through Rich Swift and Gary and try to communicate their needs, but that formal mechanism doesn't exist for them, and it doesn't exist for you as commissioners very easily to get feedback from this group of experts.
Okay, would there not be, I mean, if it was individually, I mean, if the seats were identified and we got people that came or appointed, let's just say from the medical industry or the hospitals, and they say, this is our person and they're going to represent, I mean, like our EMS council, so to speak, that they were to appoint those folks, they have some autonomy, right? And they without fear or without any barriers, they can present what they feel is important and advocate for their folks. When it's typically in a lot of board appointed committees, maybe we don't really have that. We're actually have the ability to select someone maybe that we actually prefer versus maybe someone who might actually possibly be a dissenter, so to speak. I mean, it's typical. I'm not really pointing to any particular staff or groups or organizations or departments or anything else like that. But in the general sense, I think that the ability to having a non-board appointed group to some degree offers somewhat an unfiltered perspective. And I just want to know, to me, I value that. And I just want to know if there's, I think the one you mentioned about having more activity or attendance or involvement and engagement is important, but I think maybe there's also maybe a restructuring that could be done possibly for identifying those seats and positions and roles that could stimulate what you're looking for. So just like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time as staff thinking through the pros and cons. I certainly hear those concerns. I mean, in some respects, it has been valuable that folks can more easily be appointed on the committee. But I think certainly the strengths outweigh that. And those challenges, I think, yeah, like you said, they're not unique to this council. I think any council, whether it be Clackamas County or any organization, faces those concerns, and I'm not overly worried about that.
All right, I'm ready to move forward on this. I'd entertain a motion. I don't see any other hands up.
Move to approve option 1.
Second. Any further discussion?
I have a question. Is there any opposition or any dissent? Concerns?
No, I had all the existing committee members, I had one-on-one meetings with each of them over the past quarter. A lot of excitement. You know, as I mentioned, there's just a few that feel that they've been on the council probably for over 5 years and are ready to hand it off to someone else. So no concerns that I heard about making this change.
All right.
Christina, will you please poll us?
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertston,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
and Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Philip, it's good to see you again. I just want to add something, you know, or that last one before this one, the Arts Commission. Remember, one of the first big mistakes we made as a new commission was we got rid of a committee without asking the committee.
Yeah.
The
Well,
first time the committee asked and we didn't do it. Anyway,
yeah.
interesting. So full circle here. All right, Gary.
That is it for today. You are ahead of schedule and you are finished.
All right.
You have a planning session tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Philip. Have a good day, guys. Bye.